Good on us. Oh my gosh.
I always say it's only wow, we're gonna be in his face. I'll get to see how that camera.
Hey everybody!
Hey.
Did I make enough pizza and drink? Good? Alright, awesome. Well, first and foremost, welcome if you're brand new. This is Triangle DevOps. We're really glad to have you. I know I'm a different face. Chris is traveling right now, so you're stuck with me. I'm Molly. First thing, guys, it's meetup.com/Triangle DevOps. Make sure you're following us. We've got a bunch of events coming up, so it's huge. Make sure you know the code of conduct. Treat each other like you'd want to be treated. You know the basics. You don't try to randomly grab anybody. Don't say anything derogatory. You know, just be professional. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. We've got our Twitter right here at Triangle DevOps. And then if you guys aren't a Patreon, supporting the Triangle DevOps group, guys, we do a lot of things really, really good in the community. I'm really trying to help make sure that you guys have more opportunities and that we're connecting everyone together. The support is $5 or $10 a month, and you get a t-shirt. Who doesn't like a t-shirt? So make sure you guys are doing that. Guys, do we have any hiring announcements as far as different positions that are available in the area? Yes, sir.
I'm Kevin. I work for McKesson. We're hiring 2 senior developer positions. So if you're interested, let me know. And DevOps is in everything we do, so
Awesome.
it's just make it.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
And DevOps.
All right, yes.
Dan, I actually work for a remote company, so it's a 100% remote job. We're going and looking for 2 junior software engineers, 1 to 3 years experience, preferably in .NET. So find me after if you're interested.
Awesome. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm Jeff. I'm with Bandwidth. We're hiring for mid to senior level DevOps engineers with focus on automating pipelines for internal customers.
Okay. Awesome. Yes, sir.
So I work for a company called Metabolon, and we're looking for someone to work contract short term to help us with our Kubernetes pipelines.
Okay. You want to stand up so we can see you real fast? We've got computers, so it's a little bit more complicated. All right. Anybody else?
Yep. I'm Leon, Food Logic. We're looking for 2 DevOps serverless roles. So, anything, let me know.
All right. Awesome. Jeff?
Hey, I'm Jeff Lebeco, and we have several DevOps roles available right now.
You said your name was Jeff? Yes. It's nice to meet a fellow Jeff.
We have 2 Jeffs with jobs, guys. Any announcements for the group? No? Okay. Did everybody enjoy the pizza?
Yeah.
Yeah? We're going to thank Hayes for the pizza and drinks. This is Megan.
But I hope everybody, or most of everybody, got one of these that we passed around. We do have a couple of our positions that we have open. Of course, we work with many different clients in the Raleigh-Durham area. But just really quickly, the first one, we actually have multiple openings, I think 5+ at this point. They are open, it's a direct hire position, open to any object-oriented programming language. And they will actually teach you Go and Scala within AWS and 100% new development services. We have a couple senior SRE roles. They are creating a new SRE team so you can actually choose what development language you work with. And the last one on the back is the senior DevOps engineer, and a few of the main required technologies are listed there. So I will put the rest of these by the pizza. So if you want to grab them, please feel free to, and my information is up at the top.
For your reading enjoyment with pizza. There you go. Awesome. Is Albert Chu here from PurePoint? No? Okay. Awesome. So guys, we have a couple upcoming meetups. Awesome. So March 27th at Cloud Bees, we've got From Tutoring to Big Data. April 10th, we're introducing the Cloud Native Application Bundle. April 25th, this is still to be determined when we're going to have it, but this is Triangle DevOps. It's PagerDuty, Datadog, Happy Hour, and Roundtable. It's supposed to be a huge one, so guys, make sure you're writing these down or you're following us on any of the social media. And then May 8th, Database DevOps. So all of those are coming up. And then a huge announcement, we have DevOps Days, which we're a huge sponsor of. It's October 1st and 2nd. It is a huge event. If you guys haven't already made a point to mark your calendars, October 1st and 2nd. Super easy. Yes.
In September, and I don't know the exact date yet.
Okay.
There will be a PowerShell Saturday in the area. So
Okay.
a full day multi-track PowerShell. If you're a company, if you're a Microsoft stack company, PowerShell is a valuable tool. So there will be an entire day of PowerShell conference here in the area.
Is that going to be through DevOps, Triangle DevOps?
I'm gonna once we have a date.
Okay, perfect. So to be determined, Bill. Okay.
What's September?
Okay,
September.
perfect.
Okay.
You have a month. That is part of the day.
A whole month.
And very important.
Somewhere in September. Awesome. Well, guys, I know you're all here to see for short, phenomenal things. We do have a door prize for the person with the best question, which he gets to determine. And we'll be doing questions to Chris at the very end. So
Thank you.
And I'm actually going to hand you the door prize too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. For short, before I get started, I work for Red Hat. If you're not aware, Red Hat has some news recently. I can't answer any questions about that. You know probably more than I do. Because I've been ignoring the news because it hasn't affected me at all in any way, shape, or form. So that's it.
Red Hat won't become Blue Hat.
You could. Okay, thanks. So yeah, if you don't know who I am, I'm Chris Short. I work on the Ansible team at Red Hat. I write a newsletter called DevOps-ish, and I'm a Cloud Native Computing Foundation ambassador. If you don't know what CNCF is, it's the organization that helps maintain all the intellectual property behind Kubernetes and other projects like Prometheus. And then I'm also an opensource.com contributor and community moderator. Cool. But this is DevOps is not war. What do I know about war? I sat on a toilet under a switch in uniform once. Not really. A hell of a lightsaber. Not really. That was like 2001, so like Photoshop, like back then was like actually processor intensive. So printing in 3, it's like it was like super cool. We can make lightsabers and scare people. Not really. But like I went all around the world, did a lot of stuff. Some of it, you know, kind of warlike, right? Deployed for OIF. 2002 is when I showed up, set up everything for the war, and then the war kicked off in 2003. Or, yes, that's correct. All right, so cool. I was in the military. I was in the Air Force for 11 years, stationed all around the world. Got injured in 2003, got medically separated at the end of 2010. Been doing DevOps ever since 2011. I'm okay. I hurt all the time, but I'm okay. So that happens, right? Like people get hurt in the military. Something very important I want to like point out is chances are on a day-to-day kind of scale, you're not going to take fire in your operations, right? Like no one's going to sound the alarm unless there's an actual like fire in the stairwell or something, right? Like DevOps is not war. Period. I understand there's some things that you could pull out of the military as far as like incident response or like NASA for command and control type functions. But keep in mind the premise, the very underneath thing that those policies and procedures address is loss of life. If you're not dealing with those kinds of consequences, don't embrace those procedures unless you fully understand that. You put pressure on people by doing that. You don't recognize that by just saying, oh, this is a great process. There's an under thing that look just below that. It's a great process for a reason because it's implemented by people with great things like communications systems that have rigor and structure around them. That is more important, communication piece, than the actual incident response piece. Just keep that in mind. Also, this statistic came from the what do I call it? Chris Short Academy for Pre-Talk Statistics Gathering. That's why there's the about symbol. So, all right. But today we're going to talk about conflicts in general, right? So we're going to break it, again, look underneath the layer. War and conflict are different things, though. So how does conflict occur? Why does conflict occur? And then how can we prevent that from happening during these transitions that we're doing with DevOps? So, show of hands. Who's ever gotten into an argument at work about something? Everybody. Everybody does. Some change, oh, I want to use C. I want to use Go. Kubernetes, Pivotal. Red Hat. There's other companies. I can't name them specifically. So, you know, but there's actually a reason, like, why we have these conflicts. And it's really deeply rooted in history. So, I like history. We're going to talk about some people with big names. They're hard to pronounce. It's okay. I'll teach you. We're going to talk about Graham Allison, and then this concept he called Thucydides' trap. Thucydides, that's a big word, because he's Greek. Sorry. Actually, he's Athenian. So he's an Athenian historian in general. He wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, the war between Greece and Sparta. So way back in the day. 5th century BC is when he was alive, before something happened. But he's unique in the sense that he used impartiality, evidence gathering, as opposed to saying, oh, it was just Zeus. Zeus and the gods were screwing around again. So like that was unique at the time. Graham Allison, he's an American political scientist. He has all these accolades. So I guess I heard of him when I was in the military. So somebody I respect. He got the defense, this is how I heard of him, he had the Defense Medal of Distinguished Public Service. I did some research on how you got that and whatever, and like his name was on the list. I was like, oh, what did he do? He's really smart. He knows a lot about defense, geopolitics. He works at Harvard. That's all you know. Smart guy. He's been in politics for a long time, specifically defense. He coined this phrase called Thucydides' trap. And I'm going to read it because it's very important. It refers to the natural, inevitable discombobulation that occurs when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power. So some new thing coming along, it's threatening some old thing. Sound familiar? Okay, lots of head nods, good. Okay, but the key thing that he mentions, and I think this is overlooked, this can happen in any sphere. So he means spheres of influence, politics, whatever, but I think it means literally any sphere. IT, factory work, whatever. I think it can happen anywhere. Anytime an established thing has a threat against it, it's going to react, period. It's just how it works. All right. So, over the past 500 years, there have been 16 cases in history where a hegemonic power has been uprooted by an uprising superstar. 12 of those times, and 12 out of 16 times, ended up in war. 4 peaceful transitions between a rising power and an established power. We're going to look at one. It's not doom and gloom, trust me. So, yeah, this goes back to late 5th century, Portugal versus Spain, to the Cold War and the current things going on in Europe. I'll just say Brexit. What that actually means, right? So far, the Cold War ended in peace, right? We didn't get nuked into oblivion. Cool. That's a good use case, right? That was really bad. All right. How did that get handled? Well, one country outspent the other one. Okay, fine. And then the UK, France, and Germany's ongoing. So we'll see how that plays out. But the UK is kind of in this limbo state. So that's why it's on the board. All right. Back to the quotes. The 4 cases that avoided this outcome did so only because of huge, painful adjustments in attitudes and actions on the part of the challenger and the challenged alike. So the challenged person, somebody that has all these use cases and success stories and so forth, so on, actually had to adapt to the established power to make sure that everything happened and transitioned peacefully between the two. Cool. What does that have to do with DevOps? Great, all this history. Chris, you said some big words like Thucydides. Right now, I think the state of DevOps, like Dev and Ops, are closer than ever, but Ops has like kind of been left behind in a way. Like it's really weird. Like you've got devs and ops in the same systems doing things together now, but like collaboratively. But ops isn't using the same tools as devs in a lot of use cases, right? So I still see these weird, you know, kind of hodgepodge. Yes, we're doing DevOps, but the ops people are actually just creating users and, you know, like resetting passwords. So it's like you have a help desk and a dev team. You know, I mean, you can call it ops if you want. That's cool, but like, I think of ops as more like patching servers, maintaining systems, keeping the lights on for your organization. Fear, how important that is in all of this, and then we'll actually do like a deep dive into the UK and US transition. Let's talk about Dev and Ops. Sitting around the campfire, making s'mores, having a good old time, right? Nobody in ops has ever like cursed a developer before. And no developer has ever cursed an operator before, ever, right? Like never, no. Fucking ops people. I'm one of them, so I can say that. But I think the divide here is closing. It's just gonna take a couple more years, and I feel like ops teams will learn to adapt to this new world that they found themselves in. But keep in mind that like those are the outliers, right? Like basically the big companies are already doing this. Amazon, Google, they've moved past DevOps, they're onto SRE and whatever the next evolution of that becomes and so forth, so on, right? Like this is all just an evolutionary state, but there's some companies that are still sitting in, you know, Silicon Valley time 2002. But in large, stodgy company time, it's their reality. That's how it works. All right, so outliers aren't doing DevOps, but that's really all that's left as far as people that aren't embracing some kind of integration and collaboration. Even the Department of Defense is doing DevOps. This is a slide from a call out that I did when I worked at SJ Technologies. As a DevOps consultant, we responded to a call to DevOpsify and Agilize, making those words up, U.S. Strategic Command. What do they do? Control the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal. Congratulations, DevOps. We can end the world now. We win, right? Yeah. No, it's cool. Like, actually, the doctor here, Dr. Roth, he specifically is like, this is the kind of model I want to build. So his doctorate, I think, was in like systems and electrical engineering. Went into systems, programming, so forth, so on. So like, he understood things at a very different level. He literally called out like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it was like reading, not like I want Jenkins and OpenShift and all these other things. It was very much like I want a CI/CD pipeline. That's it. I want a container orchestrator. He was very pragmatic about what he was asking for so he could get creative ideas back because they're using 8-inch floppies. They don't evolve often. These are very, very old systems that are changing now. So, long story short, everybody's doing some kind of Agile or DevOps, digital transformation, whatever you want to call it. If you don't believe me, there's a shortened URL. You can click it. I checked it the other day, still works. You can go read actual what they called out and everything. It's pretty cool. So when I hear people say, that's cool, it works in Silicon Valley, but that won't work here. No, come on. If the US nuclear arsenal using 8-inch floppy drives can say, yeah, we're changing, anybody can. 8-inch floppies, you know how old those are? It's like 1970s technology. That is old. But that was the last time some of this stuff was updated or built. What is you know, all this come down to? It comes down to fear. So going back to the Graham Allison work, it was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. Well, Athens was this massive economic power, not a great army. It was weird. Sparta had, civilization hadn't really seen anything like that. Sparta was this warrior, clearly they got land and you know how, the Greeks had process. So Sparta had tools, the Greeks had process. Who actually won? Well, neither one of them actually won. And it won, but anyways. So challenging the status quo generates fear, like just immediately. We're going to do something different. Ooh, change. Like it's instinctual. Just recognize that. Again, you're changing something. Change leads to fear. We're all humans. So again, if you don't believe Graham Allison, maybe Jedi Master Yoda can help. I don't have a good Star Trek quote, sorry. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. If you hate your ops team, you're going to make them suffer. Like that's just natural, right? Like if you can't stand working with them, you're not gonna like your job, you're not gonna like anything. Unless you're just in your IDE all day. Which who actually does that? Who's in their IDE literally all day? Like lucky you. No one raised their hand, by the way, for people on the phone. So yeah, Yoda's cool, but like let's change that quote. It's the rise of something new, DevOps, the fear it instills in people that makes conflict possible. Make sense? These people are changing things. These people are like, they're going to take my job? No, they won't do that. It's okay. Trust me. I'll explain why it's okay in a minute. You can adapt. So let's look at this use case. United Kingdom versus the United States. What? Yeah, we fought a couple times. Did you hear that? 1776, right? 1812. And in the early 1900s, we almost went to war. It was weird. The UK was this great power, but they were having trouble at home. The sun never set on the British Empire. But the US economy, again, was outpacing that massive empire. So what did they do? Well, they looked inwardly. The Lord of the Admiralty, not the one we all know, Winston Churchill, is way before that. This is turn of the century, like 1900-ish. Admiral, what's it called? Josh, help me. Lord of the Admiralty. A war with America has become something more than a possibility. Like he was quoted publicly as saying that. It's kind of scary. The head of your Navy saying that a war is more than a possibility. Why? Well, because Teddy Roosevelt was massively expanding the Navy, building the Panama Canal, being a brash U.S. president. Also, the Monroe Doctrine, which was basically keep everybody out of the Western Hemisphere that wasn't like a U.S. ally, led to basically the UK being eradicated. They only had like a couple of ports to launch any kind of Navy thing from at the turn of the century, or the turn of the 1900s. I can't say century anymore. It's like 2018. Shit. So while they had allies and they had some places they could launch boats from, it's like the Caribbean. Can't really put a massive army on the Caribbean island anywhere, right? Like, cool. And then like, I think the Falkland Islands was one of those ports, and then some port in Argentina. Yeah, let's launch a war from Argentina or the British Isles. That's going to go great. So what ended up happening was, the British Prime Minister said, we're not going to do this, right? Like just internally, basically said, we're not going to go to war with the US. At that time, the UK saw problems somewhere in Europe brewing. A lot of conflicts, contentiousness. Remember, they were all relatives back then. Super weird. They're like cousins and stuff. I don't know. Something in the water, maybe. Who knows? But yeah. I didn't say it. Yeah. So what ended up happening was this peaceful transition. This special relationship was formed. So it's like, okay, fine. You want to be brash? You want to have the Western Hemisphere? Cool. But we got Europe. So, fine. You want Europe? Here's World War I. Congratulations. But what ended up happening is, again, here's a map of the British Empire. What ended up happening was not responding to those provocations was seen as a positive thing. Oh, the U.S. didn't see it as like, oh, well, we can just run over you, no big deal. The U.S. was like, oh, well, we thought you would respond in some weird way. They didn't. So it was this nice kind of transition of, hey, either we go to war or some kind of handoff has to happen. And it was between like world number one's just duking it out. Sound familiar? Huawei. That's all China versus U.S. politics. That's another talk. So when World War II or I broke out by 1914, 14 years between, hey, we could probably go to war, and hey, we're helping them win World War I, or at least draw to a stalemate. So yeah, we were a super supplier, and then eventually contributed troops to the war effort. And then World War II happened, and we won that one as well. But that relationship would not have happened if the UK didn't concede. So if the UK actually went to war with us, came to another draw, went back to the British Isles, and then World War I would have happened, a damaged and battered UK from a war with the US was now going to war with Germany, that would have been horrible. Completely different outcome. That's what you want. You want the outcome. As long as the process gets you there, and it's moral and ethical and legal, relent a little. Give and take. All right, so I don't think we as technologists are sit here and bang on keyboards all day. Like, we're supposed to make life better. It's like technology should improve life. It's kind of my philosophy. If it's not improving life, what are you doing? Making money? That money is probably improving life. If you're not making money, you're doing open source. So what do? You work at Red Hat. I mean, so, but here's the thing, right? Like, DevOps as a change coming in is trying to figure out how to do better, faster. What's wrong with that? So if you're making the world a better place and you're trying to make it better, faster, unless you're like that Silicon Valley Hooli CEO, it's like, I don't want anybody that makes the world a better place than we do. Yeah, like, it's not a competition of who can make the world a better place. Just do it. Bring along everybody else. You know, the US didn't go against the UK alone. We had allies in the fight too. The Western Hemisphere. DevOps isn't just for IT. It's a novel idea. But the biz DevOps thing, I don't like that word. But, you know, there's a little too much something DevOps-y going on. But whatever. Call it what you want, I don't care. But I'm not going to use it. All right. DevOps the war crime. Number one thing I hear as a DevOps consultant when I was doing that, is this going to affect my job? No. Automation scales infinitely. Well, not infinitely, but exponentially, right? Like, you don't just automate linearly. 9 times out of 10, you automate, and you automate more things faster as the ball starts rolling. You build the framework, you put things in the framework. You expand the framework, you put more things in. Keep going. So now you're doing things at a much faster pace. But you still need those same functions done, right? So that person that I used to work with at SolarWinds with Josh, he's like, hey, my job is to make reports, look at, you know, trend analysis, statistics. I don't understand how to do that in a cloud world. I don't think I'll have a job in a few years. Well, what if I told you just need to change the metrics you're looking at? Cost, as opposed to number of, you know, disks used or whatever, right? Look at the, you know, utilization of a EC2 instance, not the total percentage of CPU utilization, right? Like, are we actually getting the density that we wanted out of this or not? Are we maximizing the capacity of the system? We should upgrade it. Are we not? We should downgrade it. Like, those things aren't necessarily built into AWS right out of the box. So getting those processes and figuring out how to automate that is important. That's what you give to that person. Is your job threatened? No. But do you need to adapt? Yes. We still need your function, but we need you to do it differently. So, but people still resist that. I've worked so hard to get here, now I have to pivot. I'm a DevOps guy working in marketing. Don't talk to me about pivoting, all right? I don't want to hear it. Like, it's just, if you're not adaptable, like, what did you think? You were going to be like the best widget maker ever? Because every horse and buggy driver thought they were going to be the best horse and buggy driver for the rest of their lives too, right? Like, come on. Like, cars will be gone soon, ish, maybe, who knows? But they're going to change drastically regardless, right? It's still a car. It still gets you from A to B. It still does the same thing. Should I just retire now? Obviously. No, he was still there when I was here last month, so yeah. He didn't retire. But empathy goes a long way here, right? Like, try to relate to people more. Being human gets you through conflict. Being technical solves arguments, right? So you win the battle, but you lose the war. Great. That didn't help anything, right? Like, the UK won a lot of battles against the US in the Revolutionary War, but it still lost. Why? Because of all these other problems. Address those problems. Work with people. Be empathetic. So what about networking? Can we bring network people along? What happens to all the network hardware? Well, I'm pretty sure like VPCs are pretty much all network hardware. So like a little bit of training, those same concepts of VLANs, IPsec tunnels, VPNs, all that stuff. Subnets, netting. I don't know how to do any kind of subnetting whatsoever. I like it that way. I don't do it in AWS either. Use a calculator or a network engineer if I had a bunch of stuff. That's what they're there for. Teach. Just a little bit of teaching will go a long way. How hard was it for you to learn virtualization? Everyone here knows what virtualization is, right? It's just blank faces. Oh shit, where am I? Good morning. Oh. So yeah, if your network folks could automate as fast as your systems and developers, or systems people and developers, wouldn't that be great too? You know what the like best selling part of Ansible is right now? Network automation. Why? Because no one's doing it. No one does it. It's like, oh, I'm going to log into this Cisco device. I'm going to log into this Cisco device. Log into this Cisco device. It's like you're literally doing it like we did 15 years ago. There's better ways to do this. What about security? Well, DevSecOps, I think, is a necessary term of all the biz, DevOps, DevOps, whatever you want to call it. Because the security people have to completely relearn, like, defense in depth. Like, that doesn't exist anymore, right? Like, where's the firewall? Over there. Right? Like, you don't have a network boundary. Come on. You think you do, but you don't. So everything has to be more secure. Well, how do you build secure systems if you're not testing the code in the pipeline? Bring them in and teach them how to interface with your pipeline that you're building. Show them, hey, if you test this more often, you'll know it's secure more often. It won't be this 1 year, every once in a while, we scan everything to make sure it's good. You can integrate too. But that's shared learning. That's being empathetic. That's helping. You got to be able to do that. Should you just retire now? Obviously not. For example, who routinely scans their like source code repositories for libraries that are vulnerable for stuff? Good. But I know he works at IBM. Right? Like, they make tools to do that. So, but like, that's like something right there. Does a developer want to do that? Probably not. But a security person, like, they use those kinds of tools all the time. Teach them how to put it in the pipeline. All right, DevOps isn't just for IT either, right? Like, since I joined Red Hat as a product marketer, whatever that means. But DevOps can teach marketing so much. Marketing can teach DevOps so much. The first like meeting I had with a friend at Red Hat after I joined was like, so now that you're in marketing, right? Like, you can help me figure out like how to market my open source stuff, right? I'm like, it doesn't work quite like that. You know, I just started the other day. It didn't flip overnight. All of a sudden I'm like marketing genius. But think about that for a second. Somebody that's like has an open source project of some sort, a few contributors, just wants to get the word out more. That's like everybody, right? Like, who's writing an open source project and collaborating with people that doesn't want more people collaborating? Typically more helps. typically. But again, what about like legal? I'm trying to work with some of my legal people to be like, hey, we have some stock words that we don't use, like, period. Wouldn't it be great if we could automatically scan some of that stuff? Right? Like, give me a Google Doc plugin, say, hey, nope, don't use this word. Light bulbs start going off, right? Like, yes, it's a great idea. Education works, but sometimes you need something to come along like a linter to check your docs. It's like spell checker. Linting is just spell checking for code. No, kind of. Like finance, how much stuff could you automate with finance? So much. If you could automate my expense report, that would be great. Change and failing fast. We all like change, right? We learned about change tonight. We all like it now. We're going to embrace change. We're going to take that change. If it doesn't work, we're going to throw it out. We're going to do it quick. We're not going to be like this financial services company I know about in downtown Detroit. They had all this stuff that they were doing to like do their digital transformation. All these people, all these projects, all this sort of big Gantt charts, all these things. Like, it's not working. Yeah, you're doing waterfall with more people now. Great, good job. Like you literally changed your process and nothing else. You didn't change any of your policies to improve the speed. You didn't change. No feedback was coming back into the system. It was just, here you go, here's a different way to do stuff. No tooling change, no nothing. I was like, well, there's your first problem. You're trying to do the same thing with the same stuff. Maybe try something different with different things. See if there's outcome change. It does. But what did they do? They didn't get rid of their mainframe. Still there. They followed the Nordstrom model. Mainframe's there. Put some APIs in front of it to do what they need to do with the mainframe for each application. Done. How? Why? Because it works. It's been there for 50 years. It's literally like the bottom 2 stories of their building, right? Like, it's been in Detroit longer than I have. In that building, hasn't moved collecting dust for 50 years. It clearly works well. So why replace it? Interface with it. Give and take. Don't try and get rid of the mainframe, try and use it better. Try and put things in front of it to help you interface with modern technologies. So if you ever want to like check out like the mind shift of Safety 1 versus Safety 2 from Sidney Decker, that's some of this stuff. Check that out as a good reference. Everybody read the Phoenix Project. We talk about the Andon cord or any of the Toyota Kata books. Pulling that cord is good, right? Stops the entire production line. Toyota stops this entire production line, and they call that an efficiency standard. How many cars did you build a day? However many numbers, let's say 100,000. How did you do that? They pulled the Andon cord 1,000 times a day. It taught them how to fix mistakes before they became systemic. Instead of having this mistake roll out to production, they stopped it, fixed it at the source, and kept moving. And they had times and processes around if it had to go over or something needed to be re-engineered, they had processes for that too. Again, communication. Pulling the Andon cord was communication. Something's wrong. Let's swarm on it and fix the problem. So, recap. Like 30 minutes, 45. We know people can feel threatened by DevOps. We understand that now. So approaching change and approaching digital transformation, people aren't going to like that at first. Recognize that, internalize that, and then move forward. Find allies and create success together. That's what the US and the UK did in World War II. And World War I, sorry. Early inclusion and concessions are key to success, right? Don't wait until the last minute to bring in your security team. They're going to spaz out. Bring them in early. Bring them in often. Yeah. Fail quickly, but most importantly, be a learning organization. Teach people how to adapt. All right. I like to end with a quote. I like this quote the most. I must study politics and war, that my children may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. So we must study DevOps so that our children can learn the thing that comes after DevOps. Remember, we're just building on the shoulders of others so that generations after us can build on ours, making humanity better, hopefully. Freaking Oracle. Thank you. Ah, that's your product name, sushi? Is your product name sushi? No?
That would be amazing, you know. It'd be a great way to convey a message.
Great way to
Can I-
recruit.
Wasabi.
Yeah. We did have an office fish named Sushi, but he died.
That was my daughter's first goldfish was named Sushi. Yeah.
I love what you said about the Brits.
Yeah?
Yeah, being a Brit, you know, it rocks. I'm Scottish, but yeah, we all hate the English, but I can say
We're
it.
all about love here.
Yeah, I can say it.
You had to go to it.
I can say it.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. Sorry
Yes.
for butting in, but that's what we do, right?
Yeah. You want the book.
And it's not.
Yeah.
Why gotta call it out like that?
I think he wants to ask. So I'm a public speaker myself, and when I talk about DevOps, I like to say, well, the sacred scrolls, according to Diana, which means that DevOps, more than a role or than a title, is a culture that is based on feedback. Would you say then that the future of our profession is based on that?
Yes.
Sort of establishing a culture
Absolutely.
of feedback.
So we're going down a rabbit hole, so hang on tight. So the culture of feedback. The question is basically, what is the future going to look like for us as far as the culture of feedback goes? Look at Amazon, look at Google, look at Apple, look at all these big companies. What are they doing? Gathering data. What does the NSA do? Gather data. What does GCHQ do? Gather data. Why? Because it shows them trends. Those trends are going to be what we're seeing every day in the future. You're going to see, oh, our users are doing this today. Roll out a feature to optimize for that. That's going to be the future. You're going to get data and optimize for trends happening in your application stack so fast. It's just going to be normal operation. Does that answer your question? You're going to be able to respond so quickly that the responses are going to be like automatic. It's not going to be user surveys, if that makes sense. Go ahead.
Have you considered using the Doom quote up here?
The Doom quote? Which one is that? Dune. Oh, okay.
Doom.
So not Rock, not The Rock. Okay. Because that movie was so good. No, go ahead, Dune.
Fear's the Mind Killer.
Huh?
Fear's the Mind Killer.
I don't know any of those books. So let's assume I lived a very sheltered life.
Just you can look it up.
Okay.
Dune. Fear is the Mind Killer.
Fear is the mind killer. That's a little too simple.
That's the start. No, that's the start of the the whole quote. I'll leave it to you
Okay.
to decide whether or not it's appropriate for
Got it.
your slide deck.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. No, I never considered it because I didn't even know it was a thing. That's in the back.
There's another similar position I feel like DevOps is kind of coming from, and change management comes to mind.
Sure.
And I feel like change management has been sheltered in technology-based change management, so it could be bringing on ServiceNow, bringing on some help desk system or some big system that someone comes in to help with that change management. Do we see a trend towards leveraging those types of people to come into a DevOps type scenario?
So, okay, the question is about change management and specifically change management.
Is it similar to DevOps? Is I guess my core question.
So I would say
For the book.
for the win.
You knew about it.
So
Don't worry, I'm not over.
the question is around change management, and it's the implementation of change management similar to the implementation of DevOps?
Yes.
No. Change management, in my opinion, is awful. things like ServiceNow are like grinding to the halt, like absolute showstoppers in my opinion. Why? Because ServiceNow doesn't integrate with any of the other like tooling. So if I throw API calls at ServiceNow, it may or may not work, right? Like I have zero confidence in ServiceNow as a software. Now, that's my experience talking. It could just be the fact that the ServiceNow instance I've always worked against was not maintained well. That's entirely possible. Yes, so most teams that are running ServiceNow, they get that piece of it. They know that I need to be able to track work, to be able to like do the things that help desk functions do. I can track flow, I can track, you know, oh, we're getting a lot of calls for this today, we're getting a lot of calls for this tomorrow kind of stuff, right? Like, so that's good for one function of like the DevOps pieces. So bringing that on board is good because you can generate data that you can get feedback from. But if you're not going to actually use the feedback, what good is this tracking system for? So that's the biggest thing I've also seen is, hey, we got this new system in place. You use like 1% of it as a company. You don't monitor it, you don't check it, you don't see if you're fully utilizing it, and then you're like, hey, this was a total failure. Get rid of it. Either embrace it or don't. But if you're going to embrace it, you got to embrace it fully. You can't say this stuff goes into ServiceNow, this doesn't. Because then it's just, oh, ServiceNow, I'm not going to worry about that anymore. People will find ways around it. Go ahead.
Do you have a presentation variant on this one that would say how to prevent DevOps conflicts in turning into war? So DevOps is not war, but DevOps is certainly conflict,
right,
with mediation and
so talking about like
and that kind of stuff.
So that is a work in progress, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, like
I'm looking forward to hear.
So like I'm always thinking of new ideas for talks and stuff, but like the things, I have a talk called, actually it was the first talk I ever did here for Triangle DevOps, for what it's called. It's like what the military taught me about DevOps, something like that. But like taking those like military things and correlating them to DevOps things, what I want to do now is say, instead of like tooling and processes, talk to the people piece. So here's the people things that I learned in the military and what they taught me to DevOps. Because I learned a lot about like little D diplomacy, which is like shaking hands with villagers, helping the locals when they need it, those kinds of things when hearts and minds. Bullets and bombs do a really good job of eliminating hearts and minds. So yeah, if you're trying to build up a new country or you're trying to interface and work with an ally, having those kind of conversations first, building a relationship, an actual human connection helps. Common goals, desired outcomes. Yes.
For good.
Right. Yeah.
So culture change is still the...
Culture change is the hardest part. So my newsletter, DevOps-ish, has 3 main sections: people, processes, and tools. Anyone want to guess why people's first?
The hardest one to change.
It's the hardest one to change, exactly. And that's, go ahead. What?
Well, it wasn't a question. I was going to speak to his the change management. Actually, before I get into that, is there anybody here who works for a change management company?
Calvin's far nicer than I am.
I don't want to shoot anybody down or just like DevOps them out of a job or anything. There was a so in the OpenOR, Jim's book, he has a section there. He talks about he used to work for a company that did that, BCG, Boston Consulting Group, but he talks about what we do for change management at Red Hat, and he talks about
the open decision framework.
Yeah, the open decision framework. So instead of bringing in a company to teach us how to do DevOps, teams internally talk about what our change is going to be. When we decide we want to do something new or put a new process in place or, I don't know, even hire some new people.
Make a new logo.
Make a new logo. Great.
That's been fun.
Build some new process, or just like hire new teams of people to do other jobs. You know, bring in marketing, have a marketing team to do X. Those teams, we bring different people together and just say, what do you guys think we should do? And it's kind of, instead of bringing in a company and saying, you guys are going to do this because they said you got to do it. We didn't say it, but we kind of put those processes in place ourselves. And that's part of that communication thing we was talking about, which I think it's pretty neat. I mean, not everybody's Red Hat, so
No.
Everybody's got a different way of getting there, but I think that's part of that communication piece it's pivotal.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Well, the internal initiative is always going to be easier than bringing somebody from the outside in.
Exactly.
But you don't trust your own internal people. That's why I had a job for 6 months. Lots of hands. Okay. We can couch this discussion. We'll talk later. Who was first? I'm going to let you all decide. Who goes first? Okay, the gentleman in front here.
All right, so I'm just going to share some stuff here. It's not really a question, but first.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. If it's not a question, we'll save it for later. Okay.
So it's all conflict,
right?
And compromise. How do you de-escalate a situation as it's going down that not so good place?
First, don't go down the dark path. So step one, don't go down dark path.
So after you've gone down step one.
After you said them and they said Emacs, now what? There's no winning. Nothing can be done. At that point, you have to step back. And usually, the best part of my job is being that person that comes in and says, you like them? That's cool. I do too. You like Emacs? That's cool. I don't judge you. Maybe split up for a few. And then I'll actually, I would go and sit down and talk to, hey, what are your concerns? What do you think their responses are going to be with these concerns? And then I go talk to the other team. Now, who goes first, whatever, you got to kind of decide that on your own. All the human dynamics behind that. But yeah, that's typically, how I would handle that. But again,
everyone takes the time out. Nice.
Yeah, but my wife doesn't put my child in timeout. My wife, brilliant lady, knows everything about children, literally studied them. Early childhood development. Then if you have a child and you have a child that has a problem, my wife probably knows how to solve it. She identified my son's speech impediment at the age of 18 months. That's pretty good. So she doesn't put my kid in timeout. She redirects. Hey, I can't let you do this. Why don't you do this instead? I can't let you use Emacs. Why don't you use Vim instead? No, that's not going to work. But what you can do is say, hey, you use Emacs, you use Vim, but when we come together and merge all this code into one place, it goes through one test pipe, one pipeline. That's the standard tooling we're deciding on. I don't care how you get it there. As it goes to production, that's what matters. Okay, there was more questions. Many people had hands up. Did you have a question, sir, in the purple shirt with the beard looking inquisitively everywhere?
No, I'm just trying to get it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I know we're trying to get kind of away from DevOps more.
Right.
When you're talking about having to help the migration from 7, 8-inch, I'm too young.
8-inch floppies, yes. Big floppy disk. You want me to pull up a picture? We can definitely get it life size on this screen. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's not actually what it is.
Not a zip drive either, okay?
Cool, Dad. You can put it in a site like that.
Yeah.
That, hey, we need to change from this system as opposed to in a more modern company where they're saying, this won't work for our company. We can't do this in much the same way. It'd be easier to take over the Stone Age tribe with an M16 versus having to go take something from a communist, whatever. But, people who are armed similarly versus someone who's using Stone Age tech. So then my question would be more, how, when you've got that more equal parity between the choice you're proposing, the framework you're trying to institute, which you see more obvious advantages of, what is your specific strategy, or how would you outline that to someone who has something that could arguably be similar, but you see downfalls?
Right, so first thing I do, I don't call it Stone Age tech. Step 2, I admit that it has been working. I admit that to myself. You've done a great job. Project that. I want you to do a great job faster. I want you to do a great job harder. No, I want you to do it better, right? Work smarter, not harder. That's how I want you to do things. So if I demonstrate, here is a way, I will build a use case. Here's how you do something now. Here's how I can see you doing it in the future. And that's when the light bulbs come up. It's like when you learn a new technology, right? Like if you learn, like I spent 4 hours in my office one night learning Ansible many, many years ago, and now I work for the company, right? Like I had a light bulb moment when I was learning Ansible after 4 hours. Like that is what you want when you're presenting these changes to people. You want them to have that light bulb moment too, where they understand the why behind the change. Go ahead. I have a fine Scottish friend up front.
Oh, thank you.
Is the
so
sushi
much.
good?
It was amazing.
How's the seaweed?
Amazing, like every week.
We'll talk later.
I might bring up a subject that is a bit controversial. See, I've been in this industry for 18 years, doing infrastructure and backend. How
Okay, wait.
do you
When you say infrastructure, what do you mean?
physical infrastructure?
Okay, so like hardware, not like
Yes,
software infrastructure. There is a
no,
working on
I mean,
frameworks for
I'm
actually
talking about
touching. Yeah. Okay.
I did build physical
Cool.
servers.
Yeah.
My first day at work, 18 years ago, I walked in the server's room, and the fellas, being the only woman, I'm 36, I was 18 years old. Being 18 years old, I walked in, and I was the only woman, and probably the only kid. And it was my first day. I had done some cool things, and that's why I got hired. The fellas who saw me coming in thought I came in to bring them coffee or the tools.
Right.
So how do you, as an ambassador of the of this amazing things, yeah, I forgot honestly. But
So how do you
convey that message of diversity? You know what?
diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, diversity and inclusion, exactly. Because I mean, sorry.
Yeah. No, look at the room.
Yeah,
It's
you know?
it's a very good point.
And it's not to badger on men or anything, but to say, hey guys, what are you doing to support these things? What are you doing to support, females or women in IT, and in this particular area that I think is absolutely exciting, isn't it?
So here's what I'd like to remind all the old white men in the room. We're gonna die.
Easy now.
I'm one of you, damn it. These hairs didn't get gray on their own, right? Like they didn't come out that way. So like we're gonna die. And if you look at all the statistical trends, like whatever we leave behind is our kids' problem. I don't want to be racist in my son. That should be done by now. So what am I gonna do to change that? Well, if it's that bad, I'm bringing in HR. That's the first thing to do. Here's why you can't assume anyone walking in here, say anyone, is bringing you coffee. Because I could be bringing you coffee for all you know, right? What does it matter who's bringing you coffee? Why is someone bringing you coffee? Why can't you get it yourself?
Why would they bring you coffee in the data?
Shouldn't you have your own tools? That's kind of
Well, anyway, so yeah. But it's a very valid point, and I would like to just say it is not on women to solve that problem. Do not go to a woman and say how I can help. How can I help? Observe, monitor, step in. Case in point, Slack the other day. Did you see that? Anyway,
No.
Someone used a derogatory term towards mentally challenged people. Here comes Chris. There's your slap in the face. Why the hell would you say that? That's so stupid. Delete the comment. Get out of here. One white guy talking to another old white guy. That's all it takes. Behavior's done. Be an ally. If you see something, say something. Stop it immediately. If you can't stop it immediately because it's your CEO, pull him aside privately. Sir, I don't appreciate that. Here's why. Again, the why behind the outcome they want is important. Why don't I like people assuming that they're bringing me coffee? Because that's the meaning to them. I want to build them up. Because psychological safety is the most important thing in life. That's how you build productive teams. Google did a whole study on it. Look it up. Go ahead.
So I have a question about your light bulb moment.
Yes.
So you had a light bulb moment, and you were like, "This is awesome." Tell those people about it, and they're like, "Okay," and dead silence.
Oh, okay. So I had a light bulb moment, and like I probably forgot what I was saying.
What I'm saying is like, if the other team is there, they have their. I'm not gonna
Oh, they have it. So after the team has their light bulb moment, what do you do?
Like, this is awesome. If you did it this way, it would be way faster.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, cool. This is how we do it, and it can't get any better. Have a nice day.
But you've just demonstrated that it can. And I'm here because you're threatened. Not because I'm here, though. because someone brought me in as a DevOps consultant back when I was doing DevOps consulting to be here to tell you you're too slow, hurry up. This is your lifeline.
Right.
So like when I sat down and had a meeting with people, I wasn't that aggressive, but I was like, I'm here for a reason. And we're here to figure that out. Right? Like it's never, I'm here to like suck up oxygen and take your coffee from you or have my Scottish friend bring it to me or whatever, right? Like it's, she's out of the room, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So there is some, you know, there's some degree of like, you have to make them realize change happens. Change is normal. I have 16 use cases of change being very interesting. 4 of them are only like successful transitions. So you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Like that's the premise of the talk is right. This is hard. Humans are hard. Meat is hard. Go ahead.
Well, I really do have a question buried in here at the end.
Okay, fair enough. You want me to sit down or?
No.
Okay.
So just a little context. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that we're McKesson. Those of you who don't know what that is because almost nobody knows.
Right.
Sure, healthcare. Blue Cross.
Oh, okay. Now I know.
We're like the second biggest technology company that nobody's ever heard of.
Oracle?
It's probably not them, but whatever. So in any case, we have a big multinational company that has been doing technology software development for a long time. And
so we got some old shit.
Has been very DevOps-y, but we're transition, that kind of thing. We've been sort of internally advocating for DevOps for a long time. Not really getting anywhere until last year when we had some internal organizational shakeups. A couple of key people left that allowed a lot of these changes to suddenly take off. And that, you know, that has been an interesting thing for me to observe. Sometimes, yeah, changing people is hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, you just gotta change the right person. And
yeah, so
a bunch of stuff can change really quickly.
What you didn't have was somebody realizing who the bottlenecks were.
Or we did, and they.
Or you did, and you had a really bad transition plan, or kind of, you know. Yeah, like managing people is hard. Who knew, right? Like I was a manager for exactly 6 months. Why? Because, well, it was a shit job. But what I realized is like, yeah, it was cool when I could manage people and I had authority over them in the military. Like that made it very easy. Like having to convince you meat popsicles every day that like what I'm trying to tell you is helpful, like that's hard. So no offense to meat popsicles. I'm one of you. But like I have opinions and stuff, and they're probably not going to agree with a lot of people. So that's hard to manage. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So you're a Red Hat now, so I'm sure that DevOps is adopted priorities. Maybe more than some other places, but I think the conversation we've been having is kind of revolved around that.
Right. Well, just like collaboration in general.
Right. So if we were to step outside of that sphere and take a look at some of the other business units. So maybe if you look back at the time of the consultant, so we've been talking about the how and the why. How do you communicate that or articulate the value of DevOps to those people that are not maybe native to the technology, or maybe they don't understand. Maybe they're the
completely brand new.
Maybe they're just the executives, and they're like, we know DevOps is a thing.
You need a C-level kind of briefing. Kind of
yeah. So like, how do you say like, here are the reasons why DevOps is better than what it is now? Like, what are those like top 2, 3, 4 things that you say?
Absolutely. So we got a really big help with that argument last year, thanks to Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble and Gene Kim. They wrote Accelerate, which looked at all the years of the State of DevOps report that they had collected as data and demonstrated that these groups of people doing these kinds of things, they didn't say particular tooling or anything like that. They mentioned functions and processes. And I think there was a couple mentions of certain tools at some point, but like containers in general, you're obviously talking about Docker in most places, right? Like that's kind of a given. So showing them the State of DevOps report, like a few slides from that, is usually good enough, just great enough, and like giving them the actual data is usually convincing. And then when I tell them, hey, what are your regulatory requirements? You know, like, okay, there's only so many tools to choose from at that point. makes the process a little bit easier. So chances are, in that kind of scenario, there is like a SOX or some kind of PCI or some kind of compliance thing that you deal with. Like NIST is the best one. Like I love it when people are like, oh yeah, we're NIST compliant. Okay, so you're using Red Hat and this and this. And like the list is very short for what you can actually use in like DoD. Any other questions?
I hope it's not a silly question.
There's no such thing as silly question.
What is the definition of a developer? So when companies that are kind of traditional, especially in IT, you may not have developers in IT.
Very good point. Yeah.
So there are super scripters that are being
super scripters that are developers now. They've been given like, what is the threshold for developers? What you're asking me? Right. So like an operations team is different than a development team. Why? Who's writing code? Who's maintaining code? Well, in theory, it should be the same people in a DevOps kind of world, right? Like it should be just collaborative, and everybody should be writing a little bit of code and maintaining a little bit of code. But we all understand that not everybody's a developer and not everybody likes systems, right? Like the more I talk to developers, the more I realize y'all don't understand shit. Damn! Literally just explain PKI to like seasoned developers today. It's like, holy shit, how did you get through your career not understanding there's more than one key? Right? So anyways, but like the idea of what is the threshold of a developer? What is the threshold of knowledge? Like what is the minimum skill set? There's no institutional standard for that. It's like you have to create that. There's no like organizing body that says you are developer certified. You kind of have to get, well, I guess there are actually, but it's not like like for a doctor, there's specific regulatory requirements. They have to do these things. In each state, they have to do this thing. It's not like that for developers. It's not like an electrician where they have to get a permit even, right? So that's for you to decide. It's not for me to decide either. If you're writing code and you're using Git every day, are you not a developer? Now, are you a good developer? That's to be debated, but technically you're a developer at that point, I think. Darren, did you have a question? Sorry. Okay.
Just to answer your question, our team, we do clinical decision support tools. So we have content analysts that actually go through and break down the clinical guidelines for certain treating cancer, that kind of thing. And they turn that information into information that our system can execute, right? So there's logic and there's rules, that kind of thing. And they're not your traditional developers, but we treat them like developers.
Would you call them like business analysts? Maybe?
Their official job of like content analyst or something like that.
So, okay, yeah.
But we treat them as much like developers as we can because, I mean, they're basically doing the same job, just in a different language.
Right. If you look at some of the ETL tools that are out there,
basically doing the same thing.
Yeah, if you look at some of the larger, like, Salesforce developers is a thing. I discovered that working at SJ Technologies last year. I didn't know that, like, Salesforce is like this whole world of stuff. I thought it was just a CRM thing. It's like this really big CRM platform. No. So, like, yeah, they're doing just as much development as anyone else is, I think. You're absolutely right. So treating them as a developer, I think, is 100% spot on. Yes, sir. Yes.
Kind of follow on to this gentleman's question. When you're talking to leadership folks, you kind of explain how you get them why DevOps. How do you talk to them about their part in transition?
So, like, that's meeting like 4 or 5 usually, right? Like, you don't just open with that. There has to be an understanding of you can't continue doing the same thing every day and get the outcomes you want, right? Like, again, that's why I'm here. Something needs to change. That means you have to change too. What those changes look like, we can get into, but that's usually the icebreaker there. It's like, this is going to affect your whole organization, not just IT. You're going to have to change your decision-making process as well.
What are some of the changes?
So, I mean, it's super dependent on companies, right? Like, well, if I was going to do like full-blown DevOps at Red Hat, right? Like, I'd be like, there's no product teams anymore. You're all just freaking developers. You're great. You want to write Go? Cool. Here's all this Go code you can maintain. You want to write Java? Cool. Here's all this Java stuff you can maintain. Right? Like, that's how I would treat it. You want to, work on projects together? Fine. You need a certain amount of people working on stuff? Fine. But yeah, I would not have product teams, for example. Now, would that work with 12,000 people at Red Hat? We could figure that out. It works with how many people are at Amazon? But again, they're like feature teams at that point, so that's kind of weird too. Go ahead.
So you phrase a lot of these answers as the person who has been brought in from outside
Ah.
to give an answer, and you kind of already have that pre-established reason to be in the room.
Mm.
When you're the internal person who's going and being that change advocate, how do you change that up as you can't really fall back on the I'm in this room for a purpose?
Right, I got it. Yeah, so yeah, take away my one bullet. Again,
it's not
well, I mean, so seriously, like, all about it. You know, I mean, you have to, but a better answer would be give them metrics. Like, it takes us this long to close the pull request, or yeah, we had these many failures and these many releases this year. We need to improve this. Right? Actually, start tracking things. That's step one. You can't improve what you don't monitor. So if you're monitoring for the changes you want, Darren, go ahead, because I know what you're about to say. Darren has practical hands-on experience.
Learn how to write a lot. Ooh, that's good. Executive. How to write 1 page, 2 page, lay out the actual data.
So for those that didn't hear on Zoom, Darren made a very salient point about writing a white paper to convince the C-suite. When he said white paper, he's not talking like a doctoral thesis. 1 page, front back, done. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to improve things. This is what kind of change needs to happen.
State the problem.
Right, exactly. Problem, solution, problem, solution. There was many hands up. I forget who.
His hand.
You, Aaron, was first, yes.
Are there any recruiters or hiring people in the room still? Okay, question. This talk was about people process tools. This is a people talk. But it feels like every job description I see is a tools description.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's another talk that I've been working on for years.
So the question is there just no pull from the job seeking the market to talk about? I'm a DevOps person who is interested in solving people problems and process problems and tool problems, or is the only thing y'all are approached with, I need a Kubernetes guy or I need a Python guy?
I would honestly say it is more, especially in the DevOps space, security space, spaces where there are large problems and large solutions to implementation. I would say a large majority of the time it is, we would ideally like this, but really we're looking for this solution to this problem, this type of creative thinking. So it will depend on the space. Sometimes there are just generic job descriptions thrown out there, but 99% of the time, especially if I'm getting a list of things, I will call them back and say, I honestly don't care. That seems really aggressive and redundant. At the same time,
right.
It's usually putting that to the side and really saying, in the focus of this person, because ultimately they're going to reject somebody based on who they are and what they bring to the table, creative wise, problem solving wise, instead of, oh, they don't have this technology. So really going back and making sure that you're clarifying that large majority of the time it is ultimately making sure that it is about the person and not the tech. So you will probably see that paper wise, but those conversations that we're having are much more in-depth as to the problem, the solution.
Yeah, I feel like that's recent, right? Like that hasn't been like years in the making. That's been like the past year or two, maybe?
About 2 years.
Yeah, okay.
A year and a half, honestly. Yeah. Again, not having been in the industry more than 5 years myself.
Yeah, the conversations that I had as a hiring manager changed a lot from the beginning of my time in DevOps to today. Yeah, it's very much like I want a good developer. I don't care if it's Go or Scholar or whatever, right? Like just give me somebody that can write code. Lots of hands. Again. You were first, I'm assuming? That's important. All right.
My immediate thought for both of you is maybe that's what you're looking for or what other people are looking for when people are actually looking at something. But are you both telling me that a computer isn't kicking resumes out based on it's missing this keyword and this keyword and this keyword before y'all ever see it.
That's the other problem. Yeah.
That's put a non-keywords on there, whether they've seen it one time and
Right.
actually know how to use it. Then we have to figure out, too, does this person actually have the functionality? But in the conversations you're having with recruiters, they're figuring out, too, it's your personality, it's your background, and it is that. So a lot of that, too, is in the conversations, not just the initial job description or resume.
Keep in mind, when you're on the phone with a recruiter, it's in an interview the whole time. Go ahead.
I'm not a hiring manager, but I just wanted to speak to that about, the people stuff versus the tech stack stuff. I think one effect of that is that it disproportionately excludes people who are underrating themselves. So, disadvantaged people are going to look at those requirements and say, no, I don't fit those. I'm not going to apply. I mean, that's been studied. That's like a definite thing. So the biggest reason to me is that you're excluding a lot of people that you might want.
So keep in mind, right? Like, who's the best public speaker in the world? Not me, right? So like, there has to be more than one good public speaker because there's more than one audience. Perfect example. So you're gonna have good ones. You're gonna have okay ones that you can groom. That's the biggest thing. Go ahead. I got you.
What can we do to encourage collaboration with marketing, hiring managers, HR, so we see job advertisements instead of job descriptions? Because
Interesting.
we're not attracting people that want a better job.
So what you have to do is change those people, like influence them and be like, listen, you're not going to be good candidates. Here's something I think would help in your life. Right? I want to attract the kind of person that thinks like this. So you start your job description with, have you ever thought of doing something like X? Did you ever do X on a small scale and want to do it on a larger one, right? Like things like that, like, but not just marketing fluff. Actually demonstrate, like, here's a problem we have. Here's how we're trying to solve it. Can you help? Talk about culture. Show vulnerability. You're not a perfect company. Why would you need people if your whole thing is automated and perfect and flowing fine, right? Like Kubernetes is just the step. It's not the end goal, right? Like, sorry, gentleman in the back first.
I just wanted to go back to something someone said earlier about when you're trying to influence and change from the inside and you're having to talk to the C-suite. I have a manager, this is CTO, and consultants aren't cheap either, right? So you can actually sell your own value and say, hey, I'm already here. I'm willing to take this on as like a side extra project. I'm not going to pay for this, right? But you really care about trying to make an improvement, right? And we need to say, hey, I'm willing to invest here. I can just get some support, like management like free, right? and I would say coming to events like this and other events, getting out, you can hear. I went to an event downtown Raleigh where MetLife had speakers coming in, how they revolutionized what they were doing, right? If you can meet someone, tap into them, maybe have them come speak. Because they're the outside authority. No one's going to listen to you, maybe inside the company, but they'll listen to someone outside for free.
Right.
And say, hey, show us what you did, the use case. How did you apply it? And then you can say, we're just going to copy them, right? And say that's the best form of flattery. You can say, I think you did such a good job. We want to model it after you, right? Right. And you're getting all that benefit inside your company for no cost. Right? So that's right.
I'll give you an even better one. Here's how you can take that story and take it a step further. Me, being in marketing, I have now learned that when you do something, you write a blog post. Every no matter what. Release a tool update, blog post. Oh, not quite enough features in that? Okay, other tool updates? That big jumbled up update blog post, right? Like always broadcast what you're doing. If you want to attract more talent, you've got to get on the radar screen. How do you do that? Blogs, tweets. Well, yeah. You were next?
Well, I was going to say something about when the people go through the process about job and all that stuff. They have to also keep in mind that there's also something called the whiteboard test that a lot of people go through.
So, yeah. Do you want me to stop there and keep going? Okay, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean. I did mean to interrupt you, but I'm sorry I interrupted you. So whiteboard tests, I actually just shared like a few minutes before I got here, so it's probably not even out on the internet yet. It's a new GitHub repo somebody put together of places that don't do whiteboard interviews anymore. those are the places you want to be looking. Because if they're like, hey, solve this big problem for me, you know, like one of the first interviews I did when I got out of the military was the worst one ever. It was 6 hours and it involved a whiteboard. Build me a house. Build me a pool. They were literally like going through their enterprise journey, right? Like I started with this box of software and it did this very simple function. Now I need to add this function, right? Like how do you add the features? They wanted to see if I dug in and or bolted on. That was what they were trying to do. Just ask me, hey, we got this cool product. We want to add a new feature to it. How would you do that? I wouldn't say create a whole new thing and add it on. I would say integrate it, right? Like that's what you want to know. Ask, be direct. You know, maybe you can't ask like a very leading question like that. Like, hey, dumbass, how would you do this? But, you know, right? Like, you can definitely get there as an interviewer without having to have a whiteboard involved. Like, who cares if they can't remember, you know, something that's copy-paste from their IDE? That's why they have an IDE. They have a tool for a reason. Google exists. We can't ignore that. You know? Other questions? Go ahead.
I love the culture and the people process discussions, but I want to throw a tech question.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, please.
So there was a question earlier about legacy and what would your kind of approach be?
Right.
To add on to that, like what's the ugliest, deepest, darkest legacy tech that you've seen, and how did you help get that kind of to a place where you could call it DevOps?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of failures in that story, right? Like
floppiness is pretty far.
I mean, yeah. So, like, what's the gnarliest thing I've seen to like successfully transition? I guess is the question. I'm trying to think. Saw a lot of gnarly shit. Well, I mean, like Pope Air Force Base, for example, like just south of Fayetteville or whatever, right? Like,
well, lived in Fayetteville for 27 years.
Right, there you go. Like, yeah, Vietnam. Don't go there if you do you enjoy life? Don't go to Fayetteville. Sorry if you're from there. It doesn't matter. Everyone has to live. I prefer not living there. So that was a really old base, right? Like pre-World War II, really old base. So like, give you an example of how old it is. While I was stationed there, 2007 to 2010, they had to lock down the base because they found a World War II bomb right outside one of the gates. Literally, I was driving past this thing that morning. Oh, we found it. Sorry, we got to dig it up now. No one move. Yeah, exactly. No radios, no nothing. So like those kinds of scenarios is what I think about, where you have like this antiquated stuff that you're trying to modernize, but that's literally like ripping crap out and putting stuff in. That's not like transitioning this current, you know, Linux server running this stuff to that stuff. So RHEL 3, go back to my first job out of the Air Force. RHEL 3, 2011. Already end of life, long past support, Red Hat laughing at us the whole way home, right? Problem was, this was a newspaper company. In 2008, the entire newspaper industry, or the entire news industry in general, just took a dump and has never recovered. It's been declining ever since. Sad but true. Actually, I think WAPO and New York Times are doing okay now, but there's a reason for that. It's orange. So the idea of, I don't, sorry, I lost myself in the orange joke. That was pretty good. I came up with that on my own. I'm happy. Yeah, some marmalade. So what was the question again? I'm sorry. Thank you. What was the question again?
What is the tech?
The tech. Okay, the tech, the gnarly tech. So McClatchy, RHEL 3, 2011, all these newspaper companies decided to centralize, right? Like we need one web ops team. We don't need 31 web ops teams. So great, McClatchy had that. They had that the entire time. It's called Nando Media back in the day. It's what N&O was running way back in the day. But that became like the digital arm of McClatchy News. But they also let some of their tech-savvy journalists write some scripts for the web. Like everyone did in the mid and late 90s, right? And those just lived on those RHEL 3 systems, 5 of them, forever. The entire time I was there. But what we did, which was brilliant, hey, they kept getting hacked. We're going to virtualize them. We P2V'd them, put them in this super firewalled like segment of the network where it was like, we have to know exactly, like we actually did like, we IDS'd it and we said, what moves in and out of this thing? Only open that, only allow these connections, right? It was very much like a script, go pull something from like an AP data feed, process it, display something on the page kind of thing. Scripts like that, scraping type stuff. So it was super easy to isolate, say this script only talks to this thing, done. But that took a lot of, I mean, that's, you know, you had to keep that old crap and virtualize it. So, I mean, the kernel wasn't even ready to be virtualized, right? So there was like all kinds of problems when we first started going down that path. So it was a lot of tweaking, but still keeping some of these legacy scripts going. That was the real, like, lift and shift kind of thing, I feel like, because the whole network changed. All these assumptions were made based off where those systems were in the network at the beginning, and all those just changed. And, you know, making that kind of change, that's hard, because you don't know what was in place at that point in time when that script was written in like 19 something, you know. That's hard. But yeah, when I left, it was running on that crap was still over there. They had started cutting some of that off. They had changed CMSs. It was, well, to give you an idea of how like archaic potentially it was, not that there's any such thing as archaic tech, because it was obviously still working for a while, their entire CMS was custom written in Perl.
I love it.
That was my first job out of the Air Force. Everything's in Perl, huh? You know, we didn't write Perl in the Air Force. Come on. So, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Did you ever work in an environment where some of the friction might have been coming from folks that had a hard time asking for help?
Yes. People are super, super hesitant to ask for help. They want you to observe they want help. Perfect example. I got injured. I'm really, really bad about not communicating. I'm really hurting bad today to my spouse. Now that's a problem for her because I can't do certain things. But if I don't communicate that and I get frustrated because she didn't observe that, that's just chaos ensues, right? So having to communicate is something you have to critically figure out. That's a hard one to learn. The communication story is one that's often learned through experience and failure. So oftentimes you will have to observe and say, hey, I noticed that you took this thing and all this other stuff slowed down as a result, right? Like you pulled this ticket and then all this other stuff got behind. Why? Did you need help with that? Use metrics there too. You know, it's okay to ask for help. But like if you have somebody that's like super hesitant to ask for help and you say, hey, it's okay to ask for help, and you continually tell them that, there's a reason they're not asking. You got to go address that. That's probably cultural inside too. Oh, yes, thank you for asking the question. Feigning surprise, a Julia Evans comic, is talking about like when somebody's like, hey, what's Let's Encrypt? And when people do that, what do you mean what's Let's Encrypt? Of course you know what Let's, I do not know what Let's Encrypt is. Like, don't do that. It's an opportunity to teach somebody something really cool. Let's Encrypt's freaking awesome tech. You should be excited to teach them about it. Like, look up that comic, print it out, and put it in everybody's cubicle in your department. That'll change everything if people just start going by that. Things will change. People will be more receptive.
Make it a safe space.
Not in the, millennial sense, but
Not,
psychological safety is important, right? Like, you want to hug Calvin, we can hug anywhere, all right, buddy?
On the flip side of that one, how do you deal with people who don't want help? You need to get information out of them, but they are not giving.
So, what people aren't giving you information? Anybody? Like you need metrics.
Legacy.
Okay, so like, yeah, you're trying to get like an SNMP trap set up or something, right? Who knows? It's archaic, right? Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Like that could take some that's more politics. And that's when you kind of have to say like, who's their manager's manager? Because that's important. It's got to be very delicate with that. Because that's jumping chains of commands. And if you're in an organization where they're like, yeah, we're not going to give you access to information, the chain of command is very important. So keep that in mind. People have silos for a reason. Best question. I feel like 27 years Fayetteville guy had the best question. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. honorable mention to Scotland for bringing up diversity and inclusion, as Scotland does.
Cheers.
What was your name, sir? Mike. Congratulations, Mike. He's up here for you. Anything else? Oh.
We can still mingle afterwards. I know there's a Carolina game about to go on. And people are trying to. I see all of you like watching. Oh my God, the game's about to start. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
It's going to be the longest QA ever. Can I take a selfie? A selfie.
Selfies? Is that how you call selfies in Scotland? Oh, yeah. You speak Scotland.
Oh, it's so meeting you.
What was your name again?
Diana.
Diana. Nice to meet you. Chris. Sure.
I'm a speaker.
Right. Oh, you are? Oh, cool. I went to the, were you at the big Google thing in Sunnyvale last year? I was there. Just don't. So it's fair.
I just want to.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't want to.
So there's something I want to show you that I've been doing for women in tech.
Show me all the things.
So I co-lead this organization for women in technology. We have chapters all over the world. And I am the DevOps side of everything, because everything goes with the data. It's new business. So we have chapters in Nigeria and Mauritius and in South America and all that jazz. And if something will happen to you, I didn't bring it, but we do have something for you here, like Senpai, in there. So
something for me.
and well, I don't know. I just like to keep in touch. There are a few activities and things, and
Yeah, no, like I'm happy to come talk. Or I'm happy to come show rooms of white people how to be allies too.
That'd be amazing. Please, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I owe you a card. But
No, just look me up. I'm on, like, Twitter's the best way.
you're amazing. Well, you'll see, because you'll see when the Senpai thing
Okay.
stuff. That's me.
Okay, cool.
You'll recognize the cartoon. Thank you so much. I gotta give you a hug. Cheers. Nice to meet you.
I'm actually Chris.
We connected on LinkedIn. Yes. I just want to say I'll try to write something. I have a
Yeah, she's actually one of our co-organizers.
I try to post it.
Right.
So usually the day before I say, hey, what are you doing tomorrow night? That's about as far as I try to post something. I also try to write articles about where happening get some post credits that let you come in. I just want to say, I knew you were like this with how that's my mind. I heard about you. Otherwise, big references to Chris, and you're like, well, which Chris? It's like a brilliant message, right? So it's next year. So, but I just wanted to say, I work not part of your horizon, but I basically had to work late. I just had to show you. I got to come in kind of early, so good news. Okay.
I don't think no, it's not.
Search for Chris Short.
whole area with the sponsorship side. And if you have any diverse intentions that you get Google and women can make those changes.
Newsletter's the big thing. Yeah. Newsletter's a big thing. Thank you. Yeah.
I won't forget. Oh, thanks. Nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, take it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
You're great. Nice to meet you. I've done many. Yeah. I mean, just basically acknowledge the success that women have taken.
Are you inviting me?
Sort of.
Like that's my rule.
Women take over the world. The idea is to create functions that convey the message that everybody can hold to strengthen and underrepresented marginalized society. Strength and instead to make global economic confidence. At the end of the day, it's about getting everybody involved. So I just women mobilization. I like
Functions, whatever you do.
So that's my idea. Mentors, there's the women mentors for them. I'm one of the ambassadors to Ubiquitous. And we have a chapter in North Carolina. There's the development chapter. There's so many independent businesses. The biggest one, which has huge headquarters and a lot of women's customers.
It would be really interesting to hear the people that do the hiring are actually people that were not the job description or whatever, but just say, need a person. So, and make it really important.
The organizer connected you as well.
And they don't know what the work is. They don't know what day to day is.
Smaller work though. That's why it's
good to meet you, man. So, hopefully, we'll see each other again. Sure. Cheers, man.
Exactly where it is. Right? But the other thing about it is wonderful to be back in Microsoft Word. That is not a feedback loop, not a feedback open. Certainly correct. Probably never do that. Prioritize that. Right? So that's why DevOps hopefully
eating many girls. Thank you. You look familiar.
DevOps days. We also sat together at the last DevOps meeting.
Yes. That's why you That'll do it. Yeah, no, terrible names.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that you were the one giving the talk. I was like, hey, wait a second.
That's why he was heckling the other guy. Okay.
It's so only heckling the whole time. Where it's like you had set the bar where it's like, oh, just heckle the speaker.
We're really good friends.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to go ask, how many times have you actually had a job that you actually met the job description?
No.
Exactly.
No. 0.0. Yeah, like even the job I have right now, never.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm trying to convey that to people where it's like, so having had to write job descriptions or edit job descriptions, like I've gotten closer, but I've never actually met the criteria for any job that I've ever had. A lot of drastic measures.
15 years experience. Yeah. So like, I think some of the better resumes I've seen now where they do break down the tools. I gotta get the data site, Kubernetes, or Cloud Foundry, or Swarm, right? Like we want somebody that's orchestrated a bunch of shit, right? Like that's what they're looking for. You just don't want to say orchestrate a bunch of shit for us, please, because that looks bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But those are the better ones.
Sorry to interrupt. Thanks for the. And I live a hard life.
I'm sorry you live in Fayetteville. Yeah.
I work with project.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm sure I'll see you around.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's the one that I always get reminded of. Where it's like job descriptions are either out there in general. It doesn't matter. It's like
people are more intimidated by the job description than they are the company. Most times, right? Like, I can't work at Google. I'm not a good enough X. Yeah, you can.
Having interviewed at ThoughtWorks, never thinking that I would ever make it to the next step, and always going through the next step, and then just it's like, hey, wait a second.
No, I have a very good friend that works at ThoughtWorks, and I was looking for a job one point. I was like, so should I hire you with ThoughtWorks? Like, you wouldn't. Just okay, fine. Yeah, but like a friend can tell you that.
Yeah, I had to go through all the rounds of the interview experiences and things.
It's on my Amazon interview I did in 2012, way back in the day. It was like, I'm really glad you flew me out here, put me up in this nice hotel room, gave me lunch and everything, but I've wanted to leave here since one day. I'm done here. Bye.
Yeah, it's about 3/4 of the way through the interview that I had to get, anyway, this is really what
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, and a company that has 35 people in it. Like, this is
and then you
just again, you spoke mainly on that perspective of, hey, I'm the guy coming externally, but I'm assuming you have done this internally.
I've done it internally. It's usually most of my internal transitions are always.
Okay.
So that's why I went the consulting route for a while, and then I realized, like, yeah, I really don't want to have to fire a security page ever again. So I can work in tech. Yeah, I can work in marketing too.
I had a thought related to that. To bring it up, but really, when you were talking about what is the argument you make if you're not that? Look, I'm here and you're paying me crazy money for like every reason. First argument that came to mind to me was this: what does your backlog look like?
Well, yeah.
I bet you've got one, and is it getting smaller? Do you, at the pace we're going now, is it ever going to get smaller? Would you like that to change?
So again, it comes back to metrics. It's not the problem you're actually looking at. Chances are isn't the problem you're actually going to end up solving to fix it. Yeah. So look at again the Nordstrom example with mainframe. Mainframe wasn't the problem. It was the fact that it took like 45 minutes to actually input a single freaking form on carbon copies and everything else. So like that was the fix. Digitize the form, done. Mainframe's fine. Same thing with Outline. Put something in front of the mainframe, interface with it like that. But that API is written in language with libraries that actually talk to modern libraries and other languages. So yeah, that's what's important. Other things that have worked, hey, our profits are going down. I have this idea. I read this book, right? Like, but like you have to be very like pragmatic. So like, don't be sarcastic when you say it.
Well, I'm lucky to an extent. I'm at a company that we have a weekly book club. I got and convinced them to go and read Accelerate. So we read the first 2 chapters of Accelerate for this week, and it's like, hey, okay, need a little bit of patience here, but
so I think it's no, I think they did a print version, but John Willis used to be my boss. He wrote the DevOps handbook with those people that wrote the DevOps handbook. Yep. He sat down with Gene Kim early 2017, and they wrote Beyond the Phoenix Project. So
I've seen it on IT Rocks, but I've never read
like
it.
knowing John and Gene,
Yep.
like that is some of the best content you're going to get about like the how DevOps team could be.
Okay.
Like, what kind of principles they actually pulling this stuff from. That's what's going to convince your C-suite. When you mention people like Deming,
yeah,
and like how they transformed Japan after World War II,
yep,
and that's where you're pulling principles from. They've heard that name before. They've gone to business school, right? Like saying things like that is convincing.
Yeah.
Like you've got to speak their language.
Yeah.
You got to use their acronyms, right? You know, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
And I love the Phoenix Project because I read the goal years ago. And I
Right.
understood the concept
Yes.
of the goal. And then
Yeah.
I was able to start going and telling people, it's like,
So
so
in-
remember the goal?
Yeah.
Here, read this.
In Beyond the Phoenix Project, they actually go into it. Like, did you just rip off the goal? Like John actually asked Gene. I'm sure it was stated.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Yeah, it's like, yes.
yeah, they go over that and like why Gene did it.
Yeah.
So highly recommend it.
Yeah. And if none of you have ever done the Audible edition of the goal,
Oh.
it is the greatest thing ever.
Do the Audible edition of Accelerate just for the intro.
Yeah.
You get to hear Nicole Forsgren, like she does the whole thing. But then she says like smiley winky face emoji or whatever, like in the transition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Martin Fowler, I think, did the intro.
Yes, he did.
One of the thumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he put in like the thing. She actually just said it.
Yep.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, I did enjoy that part of it. But the goal was the first Audible book that I ever listened to, and it's like a radio show. So you have like, they talk about walking onto a factory floor, and there is noise.
Oh,
in the
sounds
background.
and stuff?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. It's like a kid's narration.
Yes, it's a kid's narration, and they also have multiple casts. It's not just read by one person. There are like 5 people who are going and rolling through all these different things. It is the most amazing. And that set my expectation for Audible, and everything after that has been like,
You've been
oh wait.
disappointed ever
Yeah,
since.
ever since then, it's like, this was the best and worst first book on Audible ever.
You know they did that for probably some business school or something, right?
I don't know who did it, but yeah, and that's really good. It's awesome. I'm going to check out Beyond the Phoenix Project.
Yeah, it's really good.
Question about, so that in your presentation, totally unrelated to DevOps and whatnot, is why I left it for you. In 1900, what stops the British from landing on the like giant east coast of Canada and Halifax or somewhere else in Nova Scotia?
Their own will to not lose a war.
Well, that may be, but if you're saying, I mean, there's only they can land in Bermuda or somewhere in the Caribbean or maybe down.
Sure. So like, remember the French were still involved too, to an extent.
But like in 1900, they're still there.
So there's still some influence.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some influence today.
Sure, Quebec is still Quebec.
Right.
But,
They still speak French. They're very much not, like subjects of the crown or whatever, like the rest of Canada is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's military strategy. I didn't get into the like actual use case of it. As far as like what an actual attack plan would look like. Remember, they didn't have a large Navy at the time as well. I know that was part of the buildup. Part of the reason why World War I ended was because he was a dickhead in Germany. No, it wasn't. Yeah, he kept building in the Navy. He was like the military policy or the naval policy of the British Navy at the time was we need like in post-war, basically, right? Like we need one more ship, battleship, cruiser, and this and that. But then they took it a step further. They said, hey, we actually need to be able to we need to be able to manage our empire. Plus this shit here, plus one. That was too much. As Germans built up their Navy, that's what really kind of settled it down for them. They had to focus on EU type problems, not North American.
That makes sense.
There was a distraction.
That makes a lot more sense than there was nowhere to land in the Western Hemisphere.
Agreed. Yes, I should probably point that out, but I do kind of assume this is part of history. Probably shouldn't anymore, I guess. Yeah, they're probably not teaching World War I anymore in school, are they?
It's well. I'm 46,
I was in DC
so
last week, so
yeah,
they had no signs of the World War I memorial anymore. I was like, whoa, that's weird.
So I love that. It's the great part.
Right. Like this is awesome.
Yeah. But the one that I'm thinking of in DC, it doesn't say World War I. One of my favorite monuments is in Raleigh, where it's like the war, and it's like, yep. There's this brief span of like 20 years where you don't call it World War I, you call it the Great War.
Yeah.
And it's
War
like,
to end all.
yes. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, most of what I learned about World War I was listening to Dan Carlin on Hardcore History. I recommend it. Also, on a great podcast to listen to.
You relation to George?
Can't find it. It would be good. Totally different kind of humor, but
yes.
Someone actually makes a George. I grew up with him as Mr. Conductor, and then discovered all of his work. It's like.
Yeah, so speaking of sheltered lives, like the most entertainment I think I had as a kid was my mother's brothers. Right? My mom grew up like put me in a cult, right? So yeah, it was really weird. Now they tell me.
How many people I've met at IT where it's like I grew up in a cult? It's actually a like decent subset of people.
Because you kind of have to drink the Kool-Aid to do this shit.
Yeah.
Beyond how recruiting, talk about how recruiting sucks.
So
I have strong opinions on how that needs to change too.
I would encourage you to just do it on your own. Like, seriously, if recruiting needs to change, make it happen. I'm happy to pick it up. Yeah, there's a lot of like talks I had in my head that I need to get done. Just how to present to people, right? Like the relationship between veterans and hiring managers from the veteran's perspective. What the veteran has to do to teach their hiring manager, and them to learn about you, you kind of have to teach them too. And it goes back to collaborative. All comes back to communication. All life's problems, communication.
I was at an event last night. It was about collaboration, and that was fascinating. The guts of it is there's the way the presenter has laid out. There's 9 steps. That you got to satisfy all these 9 steps to get collaboration. If you get through any of these steps and it breaks, collaboration goes out the window. And I'm like, this makes so much freaking sense why I can't get my teams to collaborate. Like, we get stuck here, and here, and here. That's why we're a bunch of individuals.
So I watched The Good American, Oliver Stone documentary on Netflix right now. Which one about Oliver Stone? But there's nothing to say. That's why I watched it. I wanted to hear about this tech that's really was like detected in 9/11. It didn't, because they shut it off through before 9/11. So the whole premise was this Bill Lanning guy. He was basically the world's best metadata analyst. He could figure out who was talking to who just by the metadata. No contents, no nothing. He knew the person. He didn't even know a person. He knew a device. He knew this device talked to that device. And the system he created was a way to track all the devices' connections across the entire world. He did it in 2000 at NSA when they were going through a massive problem with like shitty hardware modernization projects that just failed. They turned it on after 9/11 and identified all the connections from Bin Laden out. Moved across the world, everything. Followed the whole process. Ran for 24 hours. Figured it all out. Always the metadata. There's always something under the surface that you can't see that's going to give you the answer. So it's not looking deeper. It's changing the color of the lens, changing the shape of the lens to see the other thing. I wouldn't mind hearing more. So yeah, if you look at the intelligence community from World War II, cracking the Enigma machine to now, they don't crack encryption. They look at all the other things they can see. How did that encrypted packet get from here to there? That could tell me a lot. If I piece that information with this information, that could tell me a lot. First thing they tell you about doing with security clearance, you don't talk around classified information. Why? Because that's metadata. Because you can identify everything from metadata. We've known that as an intelligence community and a government for 50 years now. This guy got started. Vietnam era, I think, is when he got his start. A little before that. So, yeah. Interesting, like Netflix. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Interesting Netflix documentary about it. I literally like solved 9/11 with just metadata. That's
scary on a certain level.
So think about how much data you're generating right now with that phone. Location data. There's probably emails coming in and out. There's probably tweets coming in and out. There's probably a Facebook message in there somewhere. And oh yeah, that intelligence network that NSA created, each one of those companies that I just mentioned has their own intelligence network too. It's called you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Exact same premise.
I gave you
Exact same
permission to
premise.
go and do that.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that they probably have someone who also, got a nice little pay bump from the NSA or some other agency to go.
But don't worry. The NSA would never like ask somebody to protect.
How the hell did they get all the stuff into Iran then?
They just dropped it in a parking lot. Just dropped the USB drive in a parking lot. Social engineering. That's all it takes. It's easier to hack the human than it is the machine.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, we only really played around with
The
it.
NSA did have feed from AT&T for a while.
I still do. Did you know that AT&T used to run all the signal and early warning systems for everything NORAD related? Yeah. If it weren't for that, they probably wouldn't exist anymore. They probably would have just completely done away with AT&T during the Ma Bell thing. The whole, when we created Bell South and all these other like Bell Labs things, yeah, we would have eviscerated AT&T and it would be gone.
Huh.
Yeah, if it weren't for that.
The story I saw was at least 15 years ago, and there was a computer room, an AT&T data center somewhere, and there was a special lock cage room, and it was effectively a raw feed from the internet that dumped into the little black NSA box, and it had a raw feed of a crap load of internet traffic.
Yeah, they've got sites like that all over the world still. Look up Five Eyes.
It's just been there for years.
Look up that. That'll tell you like how that group formed and what it does now.
I got to thank you for the presentation. Hope to see you next time. Maybe we'll go and heckle a different speaker.
Maybe. Probably won't be here next time.
Like,
I'm hurrying. Downtown. Exactly.
Go for it.
That'll tell you Red Hat IT has lots of good and bad DevOps. So.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm well aware. I mean, I just working at now, like having the DevOps background. I have documentation like how to tweet something from the Ansible. I was like, do you know who has a login to the Ansible account?
Oh, it's probably lost in Mojo somewhere.
No, it's in the Google Doc. But now it's there. Yeah. Scary shit. Where's my phone? Yeah. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Cloud Native Computing
Foundation
Ambassador.
Do you apply?
No, not yet. I don't know. I kind of got cold feet, but now I think that's kind of a good move.
I mean, I would do it.
What do I really need? Like, what are the qualifications?
Do you do anything on Kubernetes?
Yeah.
You share code?
Yeah.
Just have a good like documentation of that. That's it. Have a good application. The biggest thing. So yeah, it's. I mean.
Well, it can't be everything. I mean, obviously you're a good speaker.
Yeah, but like, would you put something in GitHub? You talk to people on a regular basis about Kubernetes stuff?
I do. I go up to strangers and talk about Kubernetes.
I'm sure you do. Most Kubernetes people do. It's like DJs. You know, I use Kubernetes in production.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's true. You guys need
What was that?
anything?
SharePoint pipeline.
Yeah, it's easy. You put your foot on the back and you pull up. You said you worked at Denver.
Yeah. For being
ambassador? They just have gratitude.
You have to go to.
Gratitude, I mean,
Still on this.
I know every Jeff in the company except for the one.
Because I was just spent like a few minutes.
just before I go into it.
He left about 3 more.
I can do this with one hand, it's not fair.
I haven't been here.
Yeah. There you
Like fresh games.
I mean, you sit up front. I mean, they, for their ambassadors, if I said, hey, I can't make it to KubeCon US, here's why, they'd be like, well, is it a financial thing? And they would pay my way and ask them to.
How many applications do you get a year?
Oh, there's a shitload. Here's the nice thing, I can short you. And current ambassador recommendations are good.
Was somebody you're in?
It's just easier when I can go to the number 2 guy at CNC and be like, hey, there's an application for this person. Right? Can you go ahead and approve that? A couple days later, we say, I mean, but it's like, hey, I have to vet this person myself, or there's already somebody that I vetted that yeah, 20 foundation people. It's not like there's 20 of them, it's like 8 of them. Right. Full-time CNCF people.
Alright, now we're into our position. How many do we stack on your list? Yes.
Probably the rest of them, all of them.
Well, they didn't start on there, that's the thing.
Oh, really?
We unpacked 2 extra boxes of chairs. So we'll see. Keep piling it up. We'll see if it will.
Right. I'm going to go first.
Yeah. It looks pretty sturdy.
I mean,
As long as we have a stack of them, really.
Yeah. Maybe short term. I'm sure OSHA will ship for some,
Pretty sure the state height is.
Pretty sure the safe height is 6 inches.
One chair per lift.
No, let's put it over the top. It's gonna fall out.
No typing during the meeting. That is new to me. I've never seen a sign like that.
Well, I got sick of it. That's me. In case you didn't know that.
Oh,
Not
no,
myself. I'm like, we had this all hands meeting. Our CEO says, the only thing I want is for you to pay attention. 1 meeting a week. People come in with their laptops and they type. And I'm just like, what the hell are you doing? How can you be more clear? He said 1 meeting, don't even bring a laptop.
So, I have mixed feelings about that.
Well, don't come to the meeting. The thing is, you can call in remote.
True.
If you want to ignore him without everyone else knowing.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Just don't bug me. If you have those new MacBooks that really click the keyboards, and it's like, I'm just.
Every once in a while, you'll get someone calling in and doing that video yourself.
Go on camera. Let's go there.
I know, right?
Go get a camera.
I just want like a recording that I drop in there that's just the MacBook keyboard, just clicking away. Like the Annoyatron, but just for you.
Yeah. It's the combination of like, there's an easy out. CEOs called it out. And you're disturbing others. Like, you're not so.
Like 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, there's so many things wrong with the situation.
So who hired that
I know. Yeah. If that's the worst thing they do, I might give it to them that it's not that bad, but you know what? We shouldn't bother moving. We can't get it.
Oh, like that group.
They go in the football room.
We can't get in there anymore. So much stuff.
I thought these still live in. Okay.
Good luck. I'll force me with you.
Yeah.
Might.
Well, you guys follow us down.
Yeah, we will. Just so I can watch this. Yeah, I should say
That's good.
They got the speaker.